Imagine a wave taller than a two-story building, but instead of water, it's thick, sticky molasses rushing through the streets of Boston. January 15th, 1919. Without warning, a massive storage tank bursts, releasing over 2 million gallons in seconds. What followed was chaos, devastation, and a disaster so strange that people still struggle to believe it really happened. This is the story of the Great Molasses Flood, how it unfolded, why it happened, and how it changed engineering and safety forever. Welcome to Night Shift Chronicles, where we uncover the stranger side of history while most of the world sleeps. A quick shout out to all the night shift workers keeping the world running while the rest of us sleep. If you're watching this during your shift, let us know your time and location in the comments. We read every one of them. And if you missed our previous episode on the Great Airship Mystery, the story of strange cigar-shaped crafts spotted in U.S. skies back in 1896, make sure to check it out after viewing this video. Tonight, we step back to Boston over a century ago to revisit one of the most unusual and devastating disasters in American history. Boston's North End in 1919 was a tight-knit, working-class neighborhood, crowded, lively, and built along narrow cobblestone streets. Immigrant families lived above bakeries, fish markets, and corner shop, while horse-drawn wagons rumbled past on their way to the busy harbor. Towering above this bustling community stood a 50-foot-tall steel tank, massive, dark, and looming over the waterfront. It held 2.3 million gallons of molasses, owned by the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, or USIA. The tank was built fast and cheap to meet demand during World War I, when molasses was in high demand for making industrial alcohol used in munitions. But from the very beginning, locals noticed something wasn't right. Residents reported strange groaning noises from the tank. Children dipped cups under small sticky leaks that bled from the seams. Even so, USIA brushed off concerns, insisting the tank was safe. No one knew it yet, but this massive structure, poorly tested, poorly maintained, and dangerously overfilled, was a disaster waiting to happen. It was January 15th, 1919, just after 12:30 p.m. in Boston's North End. The winter sun hung low, and children were playing in the streets near the waterfront. Inside the USIA offices, employees worked as usual, while horse-drawn wagons loaded barrels nearby. No one expected anything unusual. Suddenly, a sound, deep, metallic, and sharp, echoed through the neighborhood. At first, people thought it was a train derailment or an explosion at the harbor. But then it came. The molasses tank burst. In an instant, 2.3 million gallons of thick, dark syrup roared into the streets. Eyewitnesses described a wave of molasses rising 25 feet high, racing forward at an estimated 35 miles per hour. Wooden homes splintered on impact. Horses, wagons, and people were swept away as the sticky wave slammed into buildings, snapping support beams and shattering windows. An elevated train trestle along Commercial Street was hit so hard that one section buckled and collapsed. Workers scrambled to safety, clinging to twisted steel to avoid being pulled into the flood below. The force was so great that the ground shook. For blocks, a sweet, heavy smell filled the air, mixed with chaos, shouting, and panic. When the wave finally settled, Boston's North End was unrecognizable. Streets were buried under 3 feet of sticky molasses. Wooden houses leaned sideways, smashed by the force. Wagons and carts lay twisted like toys, while the elevated train tracks still sagged where the flood had struck. The human toll was staggering. 21 people lost their lives, and over 150 were injured. Rescue workers struggled to reach trapped residents because the molasses slowed everything down. Every step was a fight. Boots, ladders, and even rescue ropes became coated and useless. For days, the city tried to free survivors and recover victims. Firefighters used salt water from Boston Harbor to thin the syrup, while hundreds of volunteers worked with shovels and brooms. But the disaster didn't just affect the immediate area. The Boston Harbor turned brown as tons of molasses washed into the water. Cleanup crews reported that the smell of molasses lingered for months across the North End. The United States Industrial Alcohol Company, USIA, owners of the storage tank, initially blamed the disaster on an anarchist bombing plot, claiming sabotage caused the collapse. But investigations revealed the truth. The tank had been poorly designed and improperly tested. What looked like an accident turned into a case of corporate negligence, and the public demanded accountability. The Great Molasses Flood didn't just reshape Boston's North End, it reshaped American law. In the wake of the disaster, dozens of lawsuits were filed against the United States Industrial Alcohol Company, USIA. For 3 years, investigators, engineers, and lawyers battled over what had gone wrong. The company argued sabotage. They claimed anarchists had planted explosives near the tank, a convenient theory during an era of political unrest. But the evidence told a different story. Expert witnesses revealed that the steel used to build the tank was dangerously thin and lacked proper safety testing. Even before the disaster, locals had complained about molasses leaking from the seams, but their warnings went ignored. In 1925, after years of hearings, the court delivered its verdict. USIA was responsible. The company paid over $600,000 in damages, roughly $10 million today, to the victims and their families. But the outcome reached far beyond Boston. This case became one of the earliest examples of a successful class action lawsuit in the United States. It set the standard for how corporate negligence is investigated and prosecuted. The disaster also led to sweeping reforms. Professional engineer licensing became mandatory in many states. Stricter building codes ensured structures could withstand stress and environmental changes. And public safety regulations gained new teeth, prioritizing prevention over profit. In a strange way, the sticky wave of molasses forced America to adopt rules that still protect us today. More than a century later, the Great Molasses Flood remains one of the strangest and most haunting disasters in American history. For months after the tank burst, Boston's North End was trapped under a sticky reminder of what had happened. Workers scraped molasses from cobblestones, horseshoes, and building walls. The smell lingered for months, clinging to clothes, hair, and the harbor itself. But the impact wasn't just physical. Generations of families carried the memory. Children who grew up in the aftermath would tell their grandchildren about how the streets once ran brown and sweet. Even today, some locals swear that on hot summer days, you can still catch the faint scent of molasses in the air around Commercial Street. The disaster also shaped Boston's identity. It became a case study for engineering schools, urban planning courses, and law programs. In classrooms, it's used to teach how negligence, oversight, and profit-driven shortcuts can lead to catastrophe. And in a broader sense, it left a warning for future generations. When corporations cut corners, when oversight fails, when safety is treated as secondary, the consequences can last for lifetimes. The sticky wave is long gone, but the lessons remain. The Great Molasses Flood isn't just a story about 1919. It's a story about accountability, responsibility, and the price we pay when both are ignored. In the aftermath of the disaster, Boston rebuilt, but scars remained. Families mourned, businesses struggled, and for years, the sticky reminder of that day clung to the city's memory. The United States Industrial Alcohol Company faced an unprecedented legal battle. After years of hearings, the courts ruled against the company, ordering them to pay more than $600,000 in damages. A monumental sum at the time. But beyond the settlements, the flood rewrote the rules. It led to stricter construction codes, mandatory engineering certifications, and a new era of corporate accountability. One tank failure reshaped an entire nation's approach to public safety. More than a century later, the Great Molasses Flood still echoes through time. The disaster pushed lawmakers, engineers, and courts to demand better safety standards. Every skyscraper, every bridge, every storage tank built today carries lessons from Boston's North End. What began as a neglected steel tank turned into a catalyst for reform, inspiring regulations that protect millions of lives to this day. In a strange way, the molasses that once suffocated a city helped build a safer world. That's the story of the Great Molasses Flood, the day a city drowned in sweetness and safety laws were rewritten forever. If you enjoyed this deep dive, like the video and subscribe to Night Shift Chronicles. We uncover forgotten stories and hidden histories while the world sleeps. Before you go, check out our last episode on the Great Airship Mystery, a bizarre story of strange cigar-shaped crafts spotted in 1896 skies. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. Drop your time and location in the comments. We love knowing where you're watching from. And to all our night shift workers, this one's for you. Thanks for spending your shift with us. Until next time, stay awake and stay safe.